So how should India react? How do we navigate the shifting tides of power and security in an uncertain world? From grand strategy to military technology, from power and conflict to the unseen forces shaping our world, and from battlefields to the halls of power, we decode the past, analyze the present, and anticipate the future of global security. I'm Sandeep Unithan, and this is the National Security Agenda. They protect us at the borders, but are they safe at home? Our big story tonight on Indian soldiers being attacked. Recently, Colonel Pushpinder Bath and his 24-year-old son Angad were brutally assaulted by police officials in Patiala. Now, in the December 2024, we saw an Indian Army officer and his fiancée allegedly assaulted at the Bharatpur police station in Odisha after attempting to report a road rage incident. Now, that same month, in December, Lieutenant Colonel Karnail Singh, the admin officer of a Kochi-based NCC battalion, was attacked by two men who entered the college premises. In August 2024, a soldier stationed in Kashmir who had come home to Jaipur for personal reasons was allegedly stripped, beaten, and insulted with derogatory remarks about the military at the Shastri Path police station. Now, these incidents highlight a disturbing trend. Indian soldiers who have served their nation with honor in the face of mortal danger have been attacked not by an enemy but by their own citizens. Such incidents erode the morale of the armed forces and undermine the nation's commitment to respecting those who safeguard its borders. A society that mistreats its protectors risks weakening its own security and values. But what's the reason behind this? Why do such incidents happen again and again? And what must be done to put a stop to this? To speak to us on this highly emotive issue, we bring to you tonight Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma and Colonel DPK Pillai. Gentlemen, welcome to the National Security Agenda. General Sharma, I want to start by asking you this. What's behind this phenomenon of Indian military personnel being attacked by the police and the local administration officials? We're seeing a rash of such incidents in the last couple of months. How concerned should we be?
So Sandeep, what I wish to state is that what's happened is bad, very bad. It offends us. It pains us tremendously, especially because of the kind of service that we perform. In Punjab specifically, every household has shed people across as soldiers, and we had the best of relationship with the people and the police of Punjab. What has come to light is actually awfully bad, and I think it needs to be condemned. With no FIR being lodged, no names being given, it is obvious that the policemen are being protected by the hierarchy, and then now that the news have come out that there is compromise in the way being sought, is also gives out the feeling that the police doesn't want to proceed with taking disciplinary action against those people. Now, having said that, now the fact is that the police reforms, police are supposed to be saviors of the people. They're supposed to be our friends across in all times and all needs. There was a Prakash Singh committee report long time ago which spoke about police reforms, and tremendous amount of reforms. A very excellent report by DG Prakash Singh. But that's been about 30 years ago, and no reforms have come through. While we in the armed forces pride ourselves, our veterans and our servicemen are all well known, and we fight for their honor and dignity. But that's also true that police does take this kind of ham-handed issues against even innocent civilians, which largely may not come to limelight. People will not even come to know. Even the media will not carry it. So while we know what's happening to the armed forces is bad, but this is also kind of normal for ham-handed methods. How can you take a father and a son for 45 minutes and beat them up? Are you inhuman? Are you, it's unimaginable. So I think we need to make a serious effort to do some police reform. The policemen, it has to be driven to them that they're supposed to protect us. They're supposed to be our friends. They are not supposed to be jallad of any kind of this beating people, even if they have done a fault.
Yes. Thanks very much, General Sharma, for those thoughts. So I'm going to go over to Colonel DPK Pillai. Colonel Pillai, you're a war-wounded veteran. You're a Gallantry Award winner. Tell us, when you come home after your stint at the border, and you hear of such incidents of armed forces personnel being assaulted by policemen, as General Sharma just put it. There's been a rash of such incidents. Just tell us how such assaults, they impact the morale and operational effectiveness of our armed forces. How seriously should we take these incidents?
Definitely, the armed forces is deployed in areas where the police have failed in upholding the law and order. And the armed forces, the army particularly, is the last bastion in which the state's authorities upheld. And large amount of sacrifices have been executed by the members of the armed forces in protecting and upholding the law of the land. And it happens because those administration and the police forces have failed to uphold those things there in those areas. Now, when you come back to places where the armed forces is not seen with the kind of professional respect and regard that has to be seen, there's a clash. Because what happens here is, when you come into these places, the policemen are, a law unto themselves. There's this kind of an unwritten, very rare you find actions taken against anyone who breaches the law. Whereas in the armed forces, we are quick to punish and penalize people who breach any code of conduct or any kind of so when you see those kind of things happening and them getting away, especially in the fact that despite the blatant misuse of authority and blatant flagrant violation of individual dignity, not just being an army, no action is taken against them, or they're just a symbolic suspension or something, it definitely affects the morale. And it actually questions, because we've had several cases like this in the past where people have had the arrogance comes in the police from being very close. It's very much like the impunity with which a gangster operates. When you see gangster movies or you see movies, the impunity with which they do is the same impunity what a policeman has when he has the backing of the political authority. So whereas in the armed forces, we don't work for anything other than the Union of India, the Constitution, and our law. We derive our power and our inspiration from, upholding the law of the land. We don't have any political patronage. Whereas like gangsters, the policemen have, and they're very, and that's the reason why these kind of clashes happen, and this should not happen.
Yeah,
this is something
unchecked authority is what you're suggesting, Colonel Pillai. I'm going to ask General Rakesh Sharma about the legal frameworks that exist to address these incidents. You've of course made that point about the Prakash Singh committee report that needs to be implemented. It's been in the pipeline for several decades. There is a need to check these kind of incidents, but what are the kind of legal frameworks that exist to address such incidents? And do you actually see the need for any more laws to enforce these kind of, to ensure that these kind of incidents never occur again, General Sharma?
The fact is that there are a sufficient number of laws. It is a question of implementation of laws. As a commanding officer of a unit, it's my responsibility to ensure my 850 people are disciplined. And any measure of indiscipline is taken up strongly within the armed forces internally. And, it is, it goes to the end state as to what is required to be done. And we do not condone actions of indiscipline. If the hierarchy of the police and the political hierarchy of that place and the bureaucratic hierarchy allows things to ride across, then there is no law which is relevant. Yeah? If they don't wish to punish, then you can have any number of laws, you can have any number of changes. It makes no difference if the police doesn't want to implement it. If you have suspended 12 people, by logic, the suspension has come because of a prima facie case which has been brought across into the open realm, where there are video CCTVs available. That's why you suspended these 12 people. So by logic, if there was a civilian, you would have endorsed the civilian's name in the FIR. You are suspending 12 people and you're refusing to enter the name into the FIR. So, and then you're saying, okay, let's have a compromise. So the fact of the matter is that laws are not relevant. It is implementation of laws.
Laws are not relevant. Implementation is what's required. And this point that General Sharma made, Colonel Pillai, you also made this point about the fact that these are literally two different organizations with very different ethos. That's what you were saying, that discipline is so important in the army that you will not let any incident of indiscipline go unpunished. Whereas in the other organization, you have, as you mentioned yourself, there seems to be unchecked powers and not enough to control these kind of incidents from taking place. But what measures would you, in your wisdom, suggest to ensure that we prevent such conflicts between military personnel and local law enforcement agencies?
See, first and foremost, I must emphasize that, as military personnel, we're not asking for something extraordinary. The protection and dignity and respect that we must enjoy in a democratic country as citizens of this country is something that must be given whether a person is in uniform or not. That implies that the police people are required to uphold the law of the land should behave in a professional manner. It should be ethical, it should be above, and you see, when you see a policeman, say in Singapore or some other places, you're not afraid of them. You approach them with the confidence that they're going to help you. It can be said the same of many instances in Kerala also, where a policeman is not seen as a symbol of authority or brute force or whatever. There was a lot of reform that carried out post, remember Karunakaran's killing of a young student called Rajan, and there was a lot of reform. And a policeman is not a symbol of fear. Whereas that is what it is here. And that impunity with which they get away is something that has to be changed. This training and sensitization of these police people to uphold.
Impunity with which they operate needs to change. General Sharma, in your wisdom, what would you suggest to prevent such conflicts from ever happening in the future?
See, we do civil military relation conferences at various levels, at the local levels, and there is a relationship maintained with the local DC, the SDMs, the SSPs and the DIGs. So people are know of things, because inevitably when something goes wrong, seriously wrong, finally the armed forces do get called, so there are relationship maintained. Now, despite the relationship at a level that is maintained, the relationship may not be so evident at the SHO level. The SHO is a cutting edge, and SHO is a final authority. See, the police runs on the basis of an SHO and not on the basis of the hierarchy which gets distant away. Now, with SHO, we have no relationships of that kind. I think we need to establish liaison at that military police level or at the staff level with the local SHOs also, to know that there is armed forces people need to be respected and to be taken care of. If there is a dereliction somewhere, bring up the local authority. You have the telephone number. Link up the local authority saying there is a derelict. You can't say this fellow drunk when he's not drunk. You get the people across there, get them together saying, "Isko bolo ye sharabi tha, he's drunk across there." And then finally it comes to light they didn't have liquor. So everybody else who's there giving evidence is also scared of the police, and they give false evidence and saying that things happen in a manner. So finally it actually rests on the police hierarchy at the SSP and higher levels to get on to the policemen at the grassroots level to say, like what the DPK says, that you have to be savior. You are a support. Police is the support system of the citizenry of the country. They are not supposed to be ham-handed in the manner they are doing things, and rightly so. This does affect. Unfortunately, there are some fallbacks which also happen, and these fallbacks then finally lead to little more additional bickering which takes place. So I think the police need to be wiser also to make sure that they ensure such things don't happen, because it's not good for two uniformed forces to be at daggers drawn the way it is getting to be now.
Absolutely. It's not good for two uniformed forces to be at daggers drawn, as General Sharma said. Thank you very much for your thoughts, General Sharma, and of course, Colonel DPK Pillai. While these assaults on soldiers highlight a disturbing trend within our borders, delays in defense procurement threaten India's security from external threats. Now let's focus on another critical issue affecting our armed forces. On Wednesday, the Cabinet Committee on Security cleared a proposal to buy 307 artillery guns. The Indian Army will buy these advanced towed gun systems, or ATAGs, from two private firms, Bharat Forge and Tata Advanced Systems, for 7,000 crore rupees. It's one of the largest contracts for an indigenous weapon system placed on the private sector. It's a huge boost for Atmanirbhar Bharat, no two ways about that. But let's look at the timelines of the ATAGs howitzer deal. The DRDO began the ATAGs project in 2012. The first ATAGs guns began their firing trials in 2017, 5 years later. And then it began a series of winter trials and summer trials which lasted 6 years. And then it was up for a decision somewhere around 2022. That's nearly 3 years ago. And that decision was taken on Wednesday, after 9 years of trials and bureaucracy. It took the DRDO and the private sector just 5 years to design and produce the gun, but it took 9 years for a decision to be taken to buy these guns. That, in short, is the major problem facing India's defense acquisition process. It takes a minimum of 7 years to acquire defense equipment, from a boot to a fighter jet. And the Defense Ministry has laid down timelines now to reduce these delays. And joining me now to talk about these is Commodore Arun Golaya, former officer in charge of the Navy's Technology Development Acceleration Cell. Commodore Golaya, welcome to the National Security Agenda.
Thank you.
You know, Commodore Golaya, technology is galloping like a hare, but our acquisition processes are tortoise-paced. Is this the most serious issue affecting national security to your mind?
If not the most serious issue, it is definitely one of the most serious issues. You mentioned the technology is galloping. You know, the pace of change of technology and how fast things are changing means that if you take 9 years or 10 years to induct a thing, by the time you induct it, it's probably already obsolete. The second thing is now with the startups making a foray into the defense field, the startups cannot last that long. And cutting edge innovation is being done by the startups. So what I was saying is that in the previous section you had discussed, about the laws and the implementation. So here again, the timelines which are laid down, if we are reducing them by half, that is certainly a very good step and a very welcome step. But the proof of the pudding would be, in the eating. Even now, the timelines which are laid down are rarely adhered to. So it is not the laws or the intention in this case, but the implementation which is more important. And I've always maintained that it's our procurement rather than our innovation system which needs to be fixed. Once we fix the procurement, the innovation will follow on its own.
Right.
As of today, if I can just make one quick point, as of today, a firm has no incentive for R&D, not only because of the timelines, because even if they do develop a product and if they're the only firm or what we call the single vendor, you can be sure that, it's not a question of assurance of orders. You're assuring him actually that he'll never get inducted probably. So that is something which I think we need to address. And if we can address the procurement, I think the rest of the things will fall into place.
Right. Very important points there, Commodore Golaya, and you've been, of course, driving all of these acquisitions in the Defense Ministry. But, give us a positive example that India can now look at. Now, the Defense Ministry says they want to cut down those timelines. As you said, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But what lessons can India learn from other countries that have streamlined their defense procurement processes to ensure timely delivery of critical equipment?
So even if you see worldwide, I can give numerous examples. You mentioned about giving a positive example, but even if you take the US context, for example, there have been enough articles and enough reports saying that they also feel that the procurement has not really kept up with the pace of change of technology. You are aware, we are all aware of the Unitex, which was created especially to try and convince the Silicon Valley startups that they need to work with the defense, the DoD, because they felt that they can make as much money from the civil applications, and the defense bureaucracy is far too entrenched for them to make a difference. As far as the Indian context is concerned, we have made some changes. So you mentioned the organization which I used to head, the Technology Development Acceleration Cell. If you note, it's not the Technology Development Cell, it's the Technology Development Acceleration Cell.
Right.
The NIIO is headed, the committee with the vice chief chairs. It's called the Naval Technology Acceleration Council. It's not the Naval Technology Council. The word acceleration was deliberately put because we realized that you need to accelerate. Similarly, the other services also, the Air Force has now set up the DAD, the Army, the ADB is there, the IDEX, and specifically IDEX in that IDEX sprint has shown that, if we want to move fast, we can. Not only in development, but also in induction. I mean, the bottom line would be what I said earlier. There is intention and there is implementation. The intention, I have absolutely no doubt. The government's thrust on Atmanirbhar Bharat and the way they're changing things, the intention cannot be doubted. It is the implementation and the fine print which needs, a bit of tweaking, and I'm sure that will happen.
Right.
I don't think
Intention
the
cannot
news
be
is
doubted, but it
all
is the
gloomy because, as I said, changes
implementation
are taking place.
that needs to be looked at very closely. Thank you very much, Commodore Golaya, with your thoughts, for coming in with your
Thank you.
thoughts on this need to accelerate India's defense acquisition process. India's telecom giants Jio and Airtel have partnered with Elon Musk's Starlink for high-speed internet. Now, Starlink has 7,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. This constellation offers low latency and high speed. Elon Musk hopes to usher in a new era of high-speed mobile communication in India. Of course, he has to get formal Indian government clearance first. Now, Starlink is no ordinary system. It has enormous national security implications because it is dual-use technology, meaning it can be used by both civilians and by the military. Musk's Starlink satellite constellation is a massive force multiplier in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian soldiers communicate constantly on the battlefield using Starlink terminals. Now, Elon Musk has also boasted about how the Ukrainian front line would collapse without Starlink. Ukraine would have lost the war long ago, and Russia would be on the border with Poland right now, he said on X recently. Which begs the question, really. India has all the building blocks in place for a Starlink-like system. We have IT and telecom companies, we have satellite launch capabilities thanks to ISRO and the private sector, and most importantly, we have the capability for frugal space technology innovation. Now, you remember about a decade ago, India spent just $73 million to launch a spacecraft, Mangalyaan, to Mars. That was in 2014. Now, this Mangalyaan mission cost less than the cost of a Hollywood blockbuster, The Martian, which cost over $100 million to make. Why didn't India launch a low-cost Desi version of Starlink, which could be used by both civilians and military for telecommunications? Now that would be true Atmanirbhar disruption. That's all for tonight, and thank you for watching. We'll be with you with news and insights on national security agenda very soon.